called City of Angels. Keep in mind, this song was written in 1990, and it still has resonance for me today. Well, this city we live in, we got all that we need. Microwave housewives, color TVs, we got wall-to-wall wishes, we got lots on the wall. In the city of angels, there's plenty for all. In the city of angels, there's plenty for all. Oh, the homeless, they are many, and the helpful so few. So we all pay our taxes, it's the least we can do. But we can't find the answers, 'cause we can't see them straight. In the city of angels, they'll just have to wait. In the city of angels, they'll just have to wait. Well, this city we live in the land of the free, we got people so desperate, they're down on their knees. But with none of us listening, we can't hear their pleas. In the city of angels, there's nothing for free. In the city of angels, there's nothing for free. Well, you think we're all helpless. Yeah, you think we're all blind. 'Cause the man on that sidewalk, he's just run out of time. But it wasn't starvation, and it wasn't disease. In the city of angels, where's the angels we meet? In the city of angels, we're just making angels. In the city of angels, where's the angels we meet? In the city of angels, we're just making angels. In the city of angels, where's the angels we meet? Next song I wrote with a friend of mine a long time ago. It's called We Are All One. can see that we will all arise from the silent ashes of our lives. Planet Earth, painted gray, separate colors, they fade away. Read the writing on the wall. The sun beats hot and freedom calls. We're all one, we are one, we're all one. We're all one, we are one. We're all one, we are one, we're all one. We're all one, we are one. On an African countryside, on an African countryside, dancing round the fire bright, the holy war does subside. Oh, the truth into our faith, we're all one tribe. Planet Earth, painted blue, well, don't you know that it is true? See the writing on the wall. The sun beats hot and freedom calls. We're all one, we are one, we're all one. We're all one, we are one. We're all one, we are one, we're all one. We're all one, we are one. You can sing it with me. We are all one, we are one, we are all one. We are all one, we are one. We are all one, we are one, we are all one. We are all one, we are one. Keep it going. On an African countryside, on an African countryside. Bear the soul to the flesh, heal the human race. Day by day I find my way back to this place. Planet Earth, painted gray, there's nothing for you and I to say. Know the future, it is ours. Give me your heart and I will give you the stars. We're all one, we are one, we are all one. We are all one, we are one. We are all one, we are one, we are all one. We are all one, we are one. We are all one, we are one, we are all one. We are all one, we are one. We are all one, we are one, we are all one. We are all one, we are one. On an African countryside, on an African countryside. We're all one, we are one, we are all one. We're all one, we are one, we are all one. We're all one, we are one, we are all one. We're all one, we are all one. We're all one, we are all one. We're all one, we are all one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. That was beautiful. I really love that song, and I think it's a perfect introduction for our presenter. My name is Patricia Todd, and I'm the organizer of this event. And the topic tonight is hidden roots of social injustice. Probably many of you are familiar with Will Tuttle, but perhaps there are some of you that are not. He was featured in the movie Cowspiracy. He's also a winner of the prestigious Peace Abbey Courage of Conscience Awards, which I think is so telling that it's along with many other social justice advocates that many of us admire so well. He's also a former Zen monk, and he's also, aside from writing the World Peace Diet, Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony, he's the editor of The Circles of Compassion, Connecting Issues of Justice book. I'd also like to thank Frank Dorrell, who could not be here tonight. I think many of you know Frank. He had a family matter that he had a commitment for. It's Frank we have to thank for having this room at no charge, and also Lydia Brazon for enabling us to have the room here in the Peace Center. Tonight we're going to do like a mini fundraiser for Changelings. So after the presentation, I'll pass the hat. I think many of you are familiar with Changelings. It's a local periodical that has social justice issues in it, and I know I've been referring to it since the 90s for what to do on the weekends and nights and what's coming up of interest to me in the social justice realm. So I'm happy to be able to help raise whatever funds we can for them to keep their newspaper going. And I went vegan in 2010 after reading The World Peace Diet. It was page 9 that got to me, and that's when Will Tuttle talked about taking off your blinders. I've been vegetarian since '92, and I thought I was doing my part. I thought that was too extreme, something I could never do, which I believe many vegans have said in the past. But I did it. It seemed hard and even terrifying in the beginning to me, but I found my way, and I found my way through community, with other vegans and other people of conscience that are just interested in going vegan. So, and the other thing I want to say is I'm here tonight at the Peace Center because I've also been a big fan of Don White and Blaise Bonpane and so many others that have fought for peace and justice for decades. And it came to my mind that when I was active in the 80s, U.S. out of El Salvador, that Blaise Bonpane of the Office of the Americas, one thing always stuck in my mind, and that is what we need to do is get on the side of the oppressed. So I think that carries over to the animals as well. So tonight, I think Will's going to be touching on that, how that's another hugely oppressed group amongst us. So with that, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Will Tuttle.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you all for joining us. Let me see here. I think things have changed, so maybe I'll go this way. So can you all hear me okay? It's working?
Yeah.
And I'd like to also have a big round of applause for my wonderful spouse, Madeline, who's the artist here. And the paintings you see here and many more. In fact, just to let you know, this is a book, actually besides the World Peace Diet, we just came out with a new book called Bursting Light. This is actually only for people who can read music. It's actually a book of music I wrote. But it has Madeline's paintings, and there's quite a lot of them in here. 25 paintings and music for 15 of the pieces on my albums of original piano music. So if anyone wants, this is a book that we can pre-order now. It's coming, it'll be ready in a couple of weeks. But I think really for me, a big part of social justice work and vegan work and work for the liberation of of all of us has to do with appreciating the beauty of each other, the beauty of each other, the beauty of animals, the beauty of nature, and celebrating the beauty of this enormous and abundant earth. And certainly it's important to be aware of the devastation and the violence, the injustice, and the abuse that is going on, but to recognize also that there are beautiful expressions of life all the time, and that we can contribute to those ourselves. And so I'm grateful for the music we had just now, and encourage all of us to go forth and bring the message with beauty as well as with the passion that we feel, because I think the underlying idea in veganism anyway, which I'll be talking about tonight, is not only justice but also loving kindness and compassion and respect for other living beings. That's the underlying message. And I think when we begin to connect with our own deeper connection with our true nature and with what's actually happening on this earth, not only are we very often overcome with sadness at the violence, but we can also be, I think, overcome with the resilience of life. How every spring the flowers keep coming and mothers keep giving birth to babies, and there's something eternally optimistic about the urge of life. And for me, sometimes people say to me, you've been a vegan for 38 years, and you're giving lectures, probably over 200 lectures a year, sometimes 250 or 300. How do you take all the negativity, the resistance, and how do you keep going and doing all this? And I think basically, there's really no other choice, right? I mean, this is our life, and but the underlying idea really is that it's about love. And if we feel any sense of love and awareness of what's happening, and a sense of being conscious of the possibilities that we have on this planet, then we can begin to be ourselves a force for positive change. It's wonderful to see Dr. Armighty May here, and I'm so glad to see that we have created this whole question about the food of companion animals and feeding pigs and cows and chickens to dogs and cats and all this, to really begin to just raise awareness. And people don't like that. That's called exposing the shadow. Keep the shadow hidden, right? Don't want to. It's like the Wizard of Oz, said, just don't pull that curtain back. Toto, stop that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right? And what vegans are always doing is pulling the curtain back. That's our job, to pull the curtain back and expose what's happening, shine the light. And very often we're shining the light on the most hideous and ugly possible things. But I think it's important for us to do that so that we can protect the beauty and the innocence, which really need protection. So I'd like to, this evening, just thank all of you for coming. Thank everyone who helped make this delicious food. Let's give a hand also to the people who created the food. Thank you. And really, that brings up the other point, which is that a lot of times people think that veganism is all about no, right? I don't eat this, I don't eat that, I won't wear that, I won't go there, I won't buy that, I'm not going there, no. It's like I always say, all you do is say no to everything, right? Because I think vegans are no fun, you say no to everything. But to realize that all those no's are really actually yeses, right? I'm saying yes to kindness, yes to compassion, yes to caring, yes to being conscious, yes to waking up, yes to taking responsibility for the consequences of my actions, And so these yeses really do enormously impact our life. And that's the thing about food, right? People think that veganism is just a critique. Right? It's a critique of a system that's violent, that's obsolete, that's abusive, that's environmentally devastating, and it is. But it's not just a critique. We also have an alternative, and there it is, right? It's plant-based foods that are delicious and nutritious and available and much less actually expensive, especially not only in terms of money, but in terms of what they cost, in terms of land and water and pollution and petroleum and violence and everything else. And we can feed everyone. The underlying is we can feed everyone on this earth on a fraction of the land, using a fraction of the resources. This is a possibility. We're understanding this. This is really, if we had any sense at all with the possibilities of agriculture, we would know this. This is fantastically good news, that the devastation of the outer world that we're seeing is not necessary, because it's really founded in animal agriculture. So that's the basic reason I wrote the World Peace Diet. And tonight I'd like to just talk a little bit about some of those ideas, and also the other ideas. How many of you have ever actually read the book, just so I have a feeling? So a few of you have, a lot of you haven't. There is this other book that we just heard about, just mentioned maybe briefly, which is Circles of Compassion, Essays Connecting Issues of Justice. This is basically one of the main texts out today on intersectionality, or the interconnectedness of social justice issues, and how issues of like racism, sexism, ableism, heterosexism, classism, these different ways that we human beings oppress and abuse each other, and how that's connected to what we can refer to perhaps as speciesism. I've actually coined a little word called herderism, which I think is in a way more accurate in the sense that it describes what it is. Herderism is a mentality of superiority and use of animals, of what the beings we refer to as animals. We're also animals, by the way, but that we see them as objects to be consumed and used. They're our property. We own them. We buy them and sell them like they're just like they're tomatoes. This idea, and so I think when we begin to make these connections, we begin to see that all of our human justice issues are really rooted in a deeper issue. And so this book, I chose 30 other writers who are leaders in their fields in these topics, who actually are also vegans, and we created this book to help show how veganism, animal justice, and the whole array of human justice issues are interconnected. And then finally, if anyone's interested, this brand new book called Your Inner Islands, The Keys to Intuitive Living, is about how we can develop our intuition. Something I've been really interested in for years. Part of my PhD work at Berkeley was on educating intuition in adults. And so I think what I'm talking about with veganism in many ways is very much connected with intuition, in the sense that intuition is based on this idea that we human beings have a capacity for wisdom. We have a capacity to not just only know things by authorities telling us what's true, we have to believe them, or believing science, which we don't know who's paying for their experiments, getting the results that they want to publicize, but that we can also actually connect with an inner locus of wisdom and understanding within ourselves, and know directly what is the right thing for us to eat and the right thing for us to be doing on this short time that we're on this earth, and that we can empower ourselves by quieting our minds and listening, because we're taught in our society not to do that. We're taught in our society to be busy all the time, to be distracted, and to fight with each other to get money to survive. This basic thing, and to just use animals and the earth as products, as commodities on our quest for fame and fortune and survival. So intuition is about essentially questioning all of the underlying assumptions in our society and relying more on our own inner guidance system, our own internal guidance system. And most people, really, when I talk to them about veganism and why they went vegan, very often, actually, I hear, well, I just realized what it was. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't harm another animal. They don't talk about some scientific study that they read or something. It's just the heart opened. They awoke and their mind opened. Something opened. Something woke up out of a cultural trance that we've been, this hypnotic trance that's basically forced upon all of us. And when we wake out of that trance, we become a little bit dangerous because we might help other people to wake out of this trance. And I think this is really what it is. The fundamental trance in our society is animal agriculture. It's animal foods. That's the big one. That's the big shadow. That's the worst. The one that everything else comes from that. So that's the thing. When I was deciding to write the World Peace Diet, I remember Madeline and I were talking for years about this, and I said, most people, when they write books and talk about meat and dairy products and eggs, they say, these are bad because of three things, right? It's not good for your health. We understand that very well now. It's not good for the environment. We understand that very well now. And it's definitely not good for the poor cows, pigs, chickens, fishes, and other animals who are so abused. But the research I was doing in so many different fields, sociology and anthropology and public health and history, and also the inner research I was doing, I spent all these thousands and thousands of hours just sitting in meditation and just trying to decolonize my mind from all of the programming from since I was a little kid to connect with the sky of consciousness, essentially, that's free. And so the inner and outer research, I realized that people don't understand what animal agriculture is. It's not just these three things. Those are bad. That's part of it. But in many ways, that's the tip of the iceberg. When you understand really what animal agriculture is, what it does to the inner landscape of our consciousness, what it does to our spirit, what it does to our society, when you understand the history of this and the anthropology, sociology, as I said, the psychology and the social psychology, and all of that, and the inner level, the ethical level, and the level of consciousness, then we're empowered to not only transform our own lives in a meaningful way, but to work together, to liberate. Really, it's about liberation, because we will never be liberated if we don't liberate animals. As long as we enslave these animals, we are enslaved. We have to really get that this animal agriculture is not something we ever chose. We're born into it, and we're forced to participate in mealtime rituals. We have to understand the power of rituals. So anyway, to get back to my story, I just was talking to Madeline and saying, how important it is. Oh, and by the way, I just mentioned this as I'm going along. I'm speaking. These are her paintings, and please take time if you can to just have a look at them, because I think they're more articulate than I can ever be. If we can just connect with the eyes and the spirit, or the being, the conscious presence of animals as beings, that's a great gift that we can give. So I'm so glad that these are here, speaking in such a beautiful way. So thank you, Madeline. But anyway, the point was, when I was thinking about writing the World Peace Diet, one of the main things was this feeling I had that everyone agrees on certain things. For example, we all agree that there are serious problems in our society, and we all pretty much agree what they are. I mean, for the most part, we know there's environmental problems of various kinds. There's ocean degradation, rainforest destruction, aquifer depletion, water pollution, air pollution. Right? There's all climate destabilization. There's all these different environmental problems. There's social injustice problems. There's war and poverty problems. There's disease, various kinds. These big problems. We can put them on a list. Everyone would agree that these are problems that we should do something about. And there's another problem that everyone would agree is a problem, and that is human abuse of animals. That's a problem. Yeah, we shouldn't hurt animals. Everybody agrees on that. The only thing is, people put human abuse of animals pretty far down on the list, because they're just animals, right? And we're humans. We're so much more important. Everybody, we'll get to that, but just give us time. First we got to solve our problems. Then we'll get to the animals. Just be patient. And so I wrote the World Peace Diet essentially to take what we do to animals and take it from the bottom of the list and put it at the absolute top. That's where it has to be, because that is where it is. It is the worst thing we're doing. I mean, you can't, for two reasons. In terms of just the sheer magnitude of suffering, my gosh, I mean, I don't even have to tell you that, but I mean, we're killing, I used to always say 70 million animals every single day in the United States, and that's a mind-boggling number, that we could actually be killing 70 million animals every day. That's just for food. But then I realized when we include, all the fishes, I mean, the numbers go just into the billions every day. And so this massive amount of suffering we're inflicting on these animals, because we're very often hyper-confining them, mutilating them, abusing them all kinds of ways, and then killing it. And it doesn't even register on our moral screen. But that's one thing. But on the second aspect is that this action, this collective action of killing and confining and abusing that many on such a massive scale, it is actually the driving force behind all these other problems. If you look deeply and see on the outer world, but more specifically on the inner world, it gives rise to the attitudes that make all these other problems absolutely inevitable. And they will never be solved until we understand that it's animal agriculture and the attitudes required by animal agriculture that drive all these other things. This is the reason I wrote the World Peace Diet. So the underlying idea is to understand the power. Part of the problem is I'm going to be speaking for only probably 45 minutes, and World Peace Diet is written as an audiobook. I mean, I read the whole thing, and it's 13 and a half hours long. Don't worry, I'm not going to go 13 and a half hours. I'm only going 45 minutes. So I don't want to talk too fast, so that so I'm just going to hit some of the main points. So a couple of the main points are that anthropologists understand the power of ritual, right? They understand that every society has certain rituals, and that the rituals are the way that we pass values from generation to generation. parents to their children and institutions and so forth. And basically anthropologists understand that the primary rituals in any culture are meals. When people sit down together at a table in any culture, wherever it is, whether it's in the Amazonian rainforest or whether it's here in LA, we know this is at a very deep level. This is a tribal ritual. This is how we indoctrinate little babies into the tribe, into who we are. So this eating animals and eating food, we're not just eating food, we're eating attitudes, we're eating a whole worldview about our relationship with each other, with animals, with nature, with future generations, with the cosmos, with the creative force, whatever it is. This is it. This is what's happening. And so when we look deeply into what we're doing when we're eating animal foods, we see that we're eating attitudes that are not in our best interest. We're definitely eating foods that are not in our best interest. That's well understood now. But we're eating attitudes that are not in our best interest and that are laying the foundation for a world of increasing violence, injustice, and unfortunately ecocide, suicide, and everything else, because it's based on a complete delusion of human supremacy and objectification of other beings and materialism. And the underlying message of animal agriculture is beings are not beings, beings are things. That's the basic message of animal agriculture. A cow is not a being, a cow is something. It's a being, it's a thing that it's an it. You impregnate it, you steal its babies, you steal its milk, you steal its purpose, you steal everything from it, and you don't have to steal it because it doesn't own it. It's just an it, it's just a rock, and then you kill it, and it's beef. And we do that with all these animals, billions every day. That doesn't just hurt them, that hurts us more than it hurts them. The spiritual principles of all the world religions agree on these basic ideas that the greatest gift we can give really to ourselves is to be loving, right? We understand these basic teachings that the underlying message is whatever you sow, so shall you reap. And the basic message of the Golden Rule, for example, we were just in Chufu in China. It was so great. And there's a saying that one of the tablets, Confucius, this is the hometown of Confucius. So 500 BC, before Christ, Confucius said, do not do to others what you would not want to have done to yourself. Right? This basic Golden Rule teaching, this idea not to harm others in ways we would not want to be harmed, and to be kind to others as we would want to have kindness done to us. So the underlying idea is that we turn beings into objects and we just shut off our connection with them. We see them as things to be used. And this is the most terrifying thing we could ever imagine, to have that done to us, right? If a superior species came and just saw each one of us as tasty pieces of meat, and we say, well, wait a minute, I can sing a song, it doesn't matter. All your value is by how much you weigh, right? Can you imagine? You can't get more barbaric and more stupid, more deluded than to see beings and that their value is by their weight. Their physical mass of their body is how much they're worth. Wow. You gotta be really completely shut down to tolerate living in a society where that's going on a massive level. But that's what we're born into. And we're not just born into it to kind of watch it, we're born into it to participate in it. So as a little kid, I didn't have to just sit there and watch my parents eat the flesh and secretions of horribly abused animals. They put it inside, I had to eat. You go to any grocery store and look at the little jars of baby food and just look what's in there. Cheese, veal, turkey, beef, chicken, little hot dogs, that's what they're giving little babies. So we don't have a choice. We're compelled, without our permission, by completely well-meaning, loving people, to eat these foods, and they think they're giving us protein and calcium and things we need to be healthy. So these friends, these burgers and hot dogs and cheese and nuggets, all this stuff, they're shown to us to be our friends, but believe me, they're not our friends. This is what we have to understand. It's kind of like, I used to teach the Iliad and the Odyssey and some of these ancient texts, and when the Greeks delivered this horse to the Trojans, and there it was, and they thought, wow, this wonderful gift, it's our friend, wonderful. They didn't see that inside this horse, it was just they wanted to do nothing but just kill and destroy everything about the Trojans. They wanted to destroy them. And that is exactly what animal agriculture is. It is portrayed to us in animal-based foods as our friends, and yet, believe me, they destroy everything. And there's not anything that they do not destroy. They destroy absolutely everything on every level of our outer world and of our inner world. So we're raised in a society where we're participating in these meals. We're taught that they're our friends, that we should be eating them, and that they're good for us. So I wrote the World Peace Diet essentially to just show the full panoply, the full unfoldment of the devastation of animal-based foods, and by extension to also demonstrate the enormous healing of the wounds that we've all actually endured, inflicted on us by being raised in this society, how we can heal these wounds. And moving to a plant-based way of living is I always say, the smartest thing I ever did, 38 years ago, 1980, when I went vegan. It was the smartest thing I ever did besides marrying this wonderful Madeline over here. But really, it's like walking out of a prison, because when we're eating animal foods, we don't realize it. It's something that no one ever chooses to do on their own freely. When we go out of here and we see people going into the store and taking out their money, and this isn't just money, and I would take out my wallet if I can find it here. This is the voting booth. These votes absolutely do get counted. The dollars, when I vote, I'm not sure about the other votes anymore, but these votes, they get counted. And so if I'm paying for meat, dairy products, or eggs, I'm paying for animals to be hyper-confined and mutilated and abused and impregnated on rape racks and all the most horrific things done to them. But the thing is, I don't just stop there and pay for it and cause that horror. Then I turn around, and what do? I eat it. I mean, I'm actually building this precious human body temple with violence, misery, terror, fear, despair, anxiety, misery. I mean, how could anyone do that? How would anyone ever do that? We would never do that. It's in our basic intuition, our basic wisdom is to be careful about what we're eating, when we're eating it. This is our one vehicle for this lifetime. We should take care of it, don't you agree? We should take care of this vehicle, for ourselves, for our loved ones, for everyone. If I want to celebrate my life, if I want to sing and dance and be creative, have energy, and be alive, then this is it, right? If I have no energy, if this vehicle's all clogged up with saturated fat, cholesterol, acidifying and inflammatory animal protein and everything else, I'm going to be giving a lot of my time and energy to what I refer to as the military, industrial, meat, medical, pharmaceutical, media, banking complex. Right? They'll be getting it. I'm very fortunate. I've been a vegan now, as I say, for 38 years. And I haven't had health insurance. I haven't been into that whole medical thing, virtually at all. I mean, we don't go to drugstores except maybe now and then to buy some Band-Aids or something. But it's just wonderful to see that we are designed in a beautiful way. We're beautiful. Human beings are beautiful. I think the animals wish we would wake up and stop being so ugly and horrible to them. Be our friends. We're beautiful. We're expressions of life. So the idea is to see that if we take out our wallet and pay for this violence and then we eat that, we're doing it only because we're following orders. That's the only reason. So when we see people going out and buying these foods and eating them, no one does it out of a free choice. No one ever eats animal foods because it's their own choice. No one would ever think of that. We do it because we're following orders. We do it because we're part of a tribe, the tribe that we're born into. That's what they do, so we do it too. That's the reason, and that's also why it's so very difficult for people to change, because it means I've got to leave my tribe, and people don't want to do that. They're afraid that they'll lose all their friends, and they have a self-image of being in this particular tribe. So the good news is that Mel and I are traveling so much in the last 4 or 5 years, because the World Peace Diet has been translated now into 16 languages, and many more are coming, and so we're going all over Asia and the Middle East and Africa, Europe, Eastern Europe, and everywhere we go, we see people are joining this vegan tribe, right? And it's growing, and it's getting really incredibly complex and beautiful, and it's making an enormous positive transformation on this earth, and it's really in many ways, our only hope for the future, in the sense that it's the only thing that goes to the root of the problem. If we don't go to the food, which is our most intimate, deep connection with our society and with nature, we've got to address that, and our relationship with the other life on this earth, which is the animals. We have to address that, and veganism addresses it. So veganism is not veganism. That's just a word. That's looking from the outside. From the inside, It's just being a human being, respecting our life and loving our life and living here as we naturally would, right? And that's what it is. And it's not a new thing. I remember going to Korea. I'd already been a vegan for quite a few years, and I went there, and I thought veganism was this new kind of hippie idea, right, from somewhere, from California. And but I remember going to Korea and finding myself in this monastery. I shaved my head. I was living in this monastery. We were sitting, in meditation, 3 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night every day, just meditating. But I realized I was in this community where people had been living what we would call a vegan lifestyle. In other words, no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, no silk, no leather, no fur, no animal anything, no killing of mosquitoes, nothing. It was just really about consciousness and compassion for other life. And they've been doing this for over 800 years, since the 1100, whatever it was, when the monastery started. So I realized that this so-called veganism is not this newfangled idea. It's an ancient wisdom tradition that goes back thousands of years, actually, at least for sure hundreds of years, and it's all over the world. In Africa we find it, and all over we find these basic ideas resonating. I remember in New Zealand, the Maoris came, and the Maori at the end he said, "What this man said is true. This is the wisdom of our ancestors. This is how we should be living." This is ancient wisdom, that we have to respect nature, respect animals, respect each other, and respect the abundance of this planet that can feed all of us. So if we're serious about any kind of intellectual, moral growth for ourselves, or being part of creating peace and justice on this planet, we're called to address our relationship with nature and with animals. And that means looking at our food, of course, and our relationship with animals. So that's what we're talking about with veganism, and the idea is to realize that we've all been born into a culture where we've been, unfortunately, in a sense, forced to abandon our natural wisdom, and what do they call it when someone takes an airplane flight? I'm trying to think of that word, and they just take it somewhere else. What's the word for that? Hijack, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Our lives we've all, in a sense, we've been hijacked, all of us. It's like we suddenly have to eat these foods, and we think that our nutrition depends on them, and so we build up a whole thing about it. So the idea, essentially, is to just make an effort to understand the consequences of animal agriculture. So I'll just say a few words about the consequences. The idea is to realize that there's not just our physical health, there's also, I would say, 4 other dimensions of health that are affected. There's the environmental health, the health of our ecosystems of our earth. There's our cultural health, the health of the society we live in. And these are important. And along with our physical health, that's the outer dimension of health. There's also the inner dimension of health, which is our psychological health and our spiritual or ethical health. And just to understand clearly, and I think a lot of you understand this, so I won't go into it too much, but just briefly, from the outer world, animal agriculture is by far the number one most devastating thing we're doing to our planet. I can't overstate this, but this basically, when we're growing, gosh, the amounts, the statistics are enormous. And how many of you have seen, for example, Cowspiracy, the film? Some of you, so you basically understand, but there's a lot more in it. Kip Anderson made that movie. He went through our training, the World Peace Diet Facilitator training, and did that movie, and he's doing a couple more. He's done About the Health, and now another one on the spiritual dimension, based really on the World Peace Diet to bring this message. And but the basic idea is that it takes, according to the National Academy of Sciences, it takes 18 times as much land, for example, to feed someone eating the standard American diet or the standard Western diet as someone eating a plant-based diet. So 18 times as much land. That translates into huge amounts of food that could feed hungry people. So water pollution and climate destabilization and rainforest destruction. We're cutting down an acre of rainforest every second right now. I mean, and it's not decreasing, it's actually increasing. And that's to grow soybeans to feed to imprisoned cows, pigs, and chickens, and fishes. Fishes eat a lot of imprisoned fishes, in fact, aquaculture. Remember, overfishing the oceans, and so this destruction of wildlife habitat is causing the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years. All of this is directly attributed to animal agriculture. So we have to realize if it's one thing we want to do to just prevent the devastation of our earth, to try to reduce our environmental footprint, to use so much, according to the United Nations, 30 times as less water, 30 times less water, a lot less land, a lot less pollution, not just 1 or 2 times, but very often 10 or 15 times less petroleum, for example, in animal agriculture. It takes enormous quantities. When Mel and I lived in an RV for 17 years, we traveled all over North America. I mean, it's the ugliness of animal agriculture, the environmental devastation. Just right out here, coming on I-5, you see not only all the, they call it cowschwitz, all this, but how much hay to feed these animals, and where does all the excrement go? And we see this all over the country, in Iowa, in Kansas, in New Mexico. I mean, anywhere you go, essentially, it's an utter nightmare, animal agriculture, for the environment. And I could go on, I'll stop right there. For our society, it's the same thing. The real serious problems in our culture have to do with war and have to do with injustice. Animal agriculture is like the power that drives these forces of war and injustice on every level. And I just, don't wish I had more time to explain it, but just from the point of view of food shortages, the fact that basically we in the industrialized world, it's not difficult for us to basically vote up the price of grain on the world markets to feed to our imprisoned cows, pigs, and chickens. So they're eating, right? All these imprisoned cows, pigs, and chickens, the 75 million that we're killing every day, they're eating huge amounts of grain. All the corn, soy, alfalfa, we grow all that, all this land everywhere, growing all this food. It's 80% of the grain we grow in the United States is fed to these animals, so they're eating. But we bid up the price of grain too high now on the world market for people in less industrialized nations. They can't afford it. And then plus they're being driven off their land by the demand, again, for meat and dairy products by the wealthy people. So their land is being used now in Ethiopia and all over the world to grow grain to feed to imprisoned animals. So they're forced into the cities, so they're forced into starvation. So it's understood that food shortages are the #1 primary driving force behind conflict, and also driving refugees and the problems with refugees and all these problems. But you look deeply, you see animal agriculture right there driving this, as well as the fact of the terrible suffering. Not only are the animals suffering and wildlife is suffering because their habitats being destroyed, but we have workers. You have whole armies of workers that have to stab animals, have to impregnate them, have to do the work, and these workers have the highest rates of injuries and drug addiction. They have it's called perpetrator-induced traumatic stress disorder, just harming animals all day. So they have very high levels of abuse of people and their families and of themselves. And so what animal agriculture is, and we have to understand this very clearly, is it's trauma. It's trauma to the workers, it's trauma to the animals, it's trauma to wildlife, to ecosystems, and it's these webs of trauma to hungry people out into our society. And so to have a healthy society, to have a healthy ecosystem, this is really what we want as mothers and as fathers of children, as people who want to have a future. This is what we yearn for and want to work for. But animal agriculture, like the Trojan horse, it's unleashed and it's just attacking everything in the outer world. And then our physical health is also an outer thing too. And again, I won't go too much into it. I have a whole chapter in the World Peace Diet called The Intelligence of Human Physiology. But the beautiful thing is to see that we've all been given this gift. And think of it, this is a beautiful gift. We've all been given, every one of us, every human being has been given a gift of a physical body that does not require any animal to suffer to get all the nutrients that we need to thrive and celebrate our lives here. This is a beautiful gift, and yet the problem is we're all born into a society where we're compelled from the time we're little infants to just refuse the gift and say, no, we're going to just refuse that gift. We're going to imprison these animals. We're going to kill them. Then we're going to eat their flesh. And we refuse this gift, and we cause these poor animals and ecosystems and workers and everybody else horrific nightmares. And then we eat all those nightmares, and we don't realize it's utterly unnecessary. We refuse this great gift. We refuse our true friends. Our friends are gardens and orchards and fields, and we can easily feed everyone on a fraction of the land with a fraction of the resources, and we don't need any. It's great to see how veganic agriculture is beginning to really grow, and we see that we don't need any animal inputs. We don't need blood meal or bone meal or fertilizer or anything like that. So to understand that our body thrives on all the nutrients in plants, that we don't have to go without anything. In fact, we go without disease if we go vegan. That's one of the things that when we ask people as we travel if they have any regrets about going vegan, and we always hear the same thing. Yeah, I regret I didn't do it sooner. That was my big regret. Because, it's just really, once we realize that we don't need to eat these animal foods and the problems that they cause, then a whole new world of culinary delights, really. And I have to say, after 38 years, it just gets better. Believe me. I mean, the food just gets better and better. I'm amazed at how delicious and the variety. I mean, that jicama tonight was fantastic. But there's so many things. There's always new things to discover and explore. And of course, it's neat. We travel to all over the world, and I'm telling you, in China, you learn about there's at least 500 different types of mushrooms I never knew existed, right? Long ones, flat ones, all kinds of things. There's so many different kinds of food, but it's all vegan, it's really great. But anyway, so from a health point of view, but the thing I want to emphasize is the other two dimensions of health, which is the internal dimension. Because this is, I think, really important. One is, when we look at our psychology, besides having a healthy outer world and a healthy body, we want to have a healthy mind, right? A healthy, happy consciousness. But again, animal agriculture attacks our mind, our consciousness, and this is even more nefarious than what it's doing to the outer world, because when we're sitting down at the table as little kids, we're not just eating foods that are harmful to us, and it's well understood that even little 8 or 9-year-old kids now are getting diabetes, right? Or they have the beginnings of heart disease because of these animal foods. But the other thing is to realize that in many ways we're eating attitudes that are even worse than the foods we're eating as little kids. We're eating attitudes. What are the attitudes we're eating? There's many of them. In the World Peace Diet, I go into this in much more detail, but I'll just say maybe 3 or 4 of them. Number one, every meal is teaching us the attitude of disconnectedness, or the mentality of disconnectedness. And it's not just teaching us, it's injecting it into the deepest core of our being. Don't make the connection with what you're eating. Right? This is the basic subtext of every meal is we're just eating bacon. My mother never said what bacon was. When we had bacon, I was always the first one there because I love bacon. It's like all that fat, all that salt, yum, 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 right? But really, if she had told me what it was, if she had said, we're having the flesh of a pig who lived her entire life inside a metal crate, and she was banging her head against the bar, she was driven into insanity, and her babies kept getting stolen. Finally, they dragged her out, they hung her upside down by one leg, and they cut her throat, and now we're going to eat her flesh. And I would have said, what? I don't want to hear about it. You want me to eat it? And it was like, can I have some oatmeal? Do you have a banana? I'll do anything. I don't want to eat it. But I didn't know what it was. This is the great crime, in a sense. This is the great wound, is that we are eating horror and misery, but we have to just not talk about it. Don't talk about it. This is what Carl Jung called the shadow. The shadow does 2 things, and this is the biggest shadow in our society. That's why people are so afraid to talk about this, because it's something, the bigger the shadow is, the more invisible it is. And the abuse of animals is so vast that it's invisible, essentially, and it forces us to do the 2 things. One is essentially to just repress, just keep it down, just hold it down, just don't talk about it, just pretend everything's good. But we can't keep it repressed, so then what do? Then we project. We have all these movies with violence. We have enemies who are bad, and we got to attack them. We build all our bombs because they're very cruel and violent. We're good, loving, kind people. We like a good steak, but we're good, loving people. But they're really bad. They're cruel, and they'll hurt you. We got them. So we got to understand these dynamics are so powerful. The energy it takes to hold our wisdom down constantly. We have to constantly hold our wisdom down. Can you imagine going around just constantly making yourself stay stupid all the time, every day? The natural wisdom wants to come out. It's like a ball being held underwater. It wants to come up. Hey, don't you know you're eating animals and it's terrible and they're suffering? No. Keep it down. You're walking around keeping it down. It takes a lot of energy to keep that down our entire life. But we have to, because if it's worse to think of having to leave my tribe somehow. That's what we go through. That's the thing. And so, but the mentality of disconnectedness, we pay a huge price, because the capacity to make connections, that is the definition of intelligence. That is the definition. The definition of intelligence is the capacity to make meaningful connections and respond to feedback meaningfully. So if every meal is teaching us, don't make the connection, Don't look deeply. Don't listen deeply. Don't care deeply. Don't be aware. Just don't be aware. Just go unconscious. Don't think about it. Stay shallow. Don't ever question authorities. They know what's right. Just do what you're told and eat what you're told to eat. This is the basic message that's injected into us with our meals, and so vegans are very dangerous in the sense that we're just saying, look, let's look deeply, let's care deeply, let's listen deeply, let's make the connections. Let's not just stay shallow, let's go down and see what is it we're eating actually, and how does it affect us, and how does it affect others, and what's going on here? I just want to find out. I'm just curious. I just want to know. And cultivating this natural sense of making connections, not only cognitively, but also affectively, to feel what it might feel like to be these animals, for example, or the hungry people. So that's one, is disconnectedness. The second attitude, which is also serious, and well, I just want to say too, when you have an entire population, listen, this is important, I think, who has been compelled to eat animal foods, and compelled to engage in rituals that ritualized, these are rituals, meals are not just behaviors, it's a ritual of disconnectedness, then you have a whole society of people who are relatively easy to control. I mean, they'll pretty much believe whatever the officials tell them, they'll pretty much reliably buy the products, they'll pretty much go to war for you, do what you want to do. So what we're talking about is questioning the official narrative. Question the official narrative about food and about everything, really. And number two, every meal is teaching us to look with a way, to adopt a way of seeing where we learn to see beings who are obviously beings. No, that's not a being, that's a thing. So it's turning beings into commodities, this commoditization of beings. When we do that to pigs and cows and chickens, it's a small step to doing it to ecosystems, it's a small step to doing it to each other, and eventually to ourselves. You know, I have to make a good resume, I've got to sell myself on the market, and it crushes our self-esteem, it turns us into objects, we turn each other into objects, everybody becomes an instrument, everybody has a price that they'll do what you want them to do, whatever they'll do for, and we all become instruments, and we just create a society of reductionism, of predatory capitalism. I mean, you want animal agriculture, then you're going to have it, and don't ever think you're going to escape it, because animal agriculture is based on this at the deepest core level, politically, economically, culturally, psychologically. You can't get deeper than this. So, and it's also based on privilege and elitism. I mean, the fundamental subtext of every meal is certain beings are superior. Other beings are inherently inferior, and it's fine for the superior beings to dominate, exploit, abuse, imprison the inferior beings however they want, because they're superior. We're the superior ones, and they're the inferior ones. And so how can we, again, expect to ever have any kind of social justice movement go anywhere when the fundamental driving, deepest activity and ritualized behavior is the exact opposite of that, of saying might makes right, and entitlement and elitism. That's what we're all eating, and so it's obvious we're going to have a completely authoritarian society, and most of the wealth in the hands of a tiny few. So veganism, again, is questioning this and doing it in a way that is practical. And I think when we question privilege and entitlement and elitism, then we begin to liberate ourselves and our society. The fourth one and final one is very important, and that is the domination of the feminine. Animal agriculture is based on the domination of animals, but not just animals. It's based on the domination of female animals. We have to really get this very clear. It's female animals. You can't do animal agriculture without killing them. That's what it is. It's killing them and raping them. You can't have it. You will never, from the very beginning, when you go back 10,000 years, and I'll just give this brief history lesson here as part of this, but and then I'm going to have to stop, I think, because I'm okay. So I'll just a couple more minutes. So basically, the sacred feminine is so important, because the sacred feminine, I refer to this as Sophia in the World Peace Diet. Sophia was the ancient Greek goddess of wisdom, and I think Sophia refers to a capacity that we all have. I think women maybe have it more than men, but maybe not. I don't know, who knows? But it's just the capacity within human beings to love and nurture and protect life. It's obvious that women as mothers, it's just really primal. This little baby is born, and the baby is nothing but a bunch of trouble, but the mother's like right there, I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna love you, protect you, nurture you. That's the foundation of a healthy society. We all know that if we do not get that when we're little kids, a nurturing, loving presence like that, then we're not going to be healthy physically, psychologically, and we're not going to have a healthy society. And that's the foundation of everything. So what is animal agriculture? It's just destroy that. Just a mother cow, mother pig, mother anything, give birth to their baby. That's their baby. They want to love and nurture that baby. You steal the baby and kill the baby. You steal the milk, you steal the eggs, you impregnate them on rape racks. All of the animals, whether it's turkeys, pigs, cows, chickens, even fishes, they're all impregnated on rape racks. So this forcible impregnation and the stealing of the babies, this desecration of the most sacred relationship there is between the mother and the offspring. It's the one thing we know in our bones. We should just allow that. No, animal agriculture is you destroy that. And so, I mean, what are we doing? We're raised in a society where we're doing this millions of times every day, and then we're feeding it to our children. The domination in the most hideous, brutal way imaginable of mothers and babies. That's what animal agriculture is from the very beginning. And so these attitudes, or this disconnectedness, might makes right, commodification of life, and the domination and exploitation of the sacred feminine. I mean, this is the devastation of our psychological, moral, ethical, and spiritual health. We lose our purpose. When we steal others' purposes like we do with animals, we lose our own purpose, and we don't know. Humans, that's the great problem we have. I go to colleges and I ask students, so what's your purpose? And they look at me like, consume, of course. I'm here to buy things. That's why I'm here. You know, are we on this earth to just buy and destroy, or are we here to contribute, to awaken, and to bless, and to somehow be part of the solution? So the final little piece I said I would mention is the history part. I'll just say there's a chapter in the World Peace Diet that kind of goes into this, and I referred earlier to the word herderism. I'm talking about herding animals. And it's funny, it sounds like herding. Herding and herding kind of go together. They really do both. But herding with a D, you know, we started doing that about 10,000 years ago. All the anthropologists kind of agree on that. And it was probably in what is today Iraq. And basically, it was wild sheep, wild goats, and about 2,000 years later, wild cows. And this whole thing of herding animals was basically a practice of stealing their purposes of free-living animals and confining them and then making them into our property. And so it was reducing them. And so the mysterious and powerful and respected animals became property. So their status was reduced. That was number one. Number two was that gave rise, over millennia, it took a long time for this to happen, but it gave rise eventually to a wealthy elite class. There had never been a wealthy elite class on planet Earth before, but once you start having animal agriculture, then you have a wealthy elite class. And who is the wealthy elite class? They're the ones that own what? They own animals. It's called stock, livestock. It's called capital. You know, the ancient word in Latin, capita, means head, as in head of goats and sheep and cows. So we get our word capital and capitalism from that. So these proto-capitalists arose who were rich and powerful. I used to teach college courses on the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Iliad, the Odyssey, the ancient Old Testament writings, the ancient Greek tragedies. There's these kings, right? They're controlling everything. And why are they the kings? Why are they so powerful? Because they own livestock. That's their wealth. So they're dominating everything. And then they create two new institutions that had never been on planet Earth before. One is war. There had never been war. But once you have livestock, then you have these kings, and they start attacking each other with whole armies. Why? Because they want to get rich quick. So the very first word for war that we know of, the most ancient word for war, is the old word gavia, which means the desire for more cows. That's the first word for war. So we have these ranchers going to war with each other, and whoever loses the war, you did not want to lose a war back then, believe me. That was like, because everyone, not only the livestock become the property of the victors, but guess what else became the property of the victors? Yeah, the women and the men too. But the women, it was worse, because they would be impregnated on rape racks like the animals, and their babies would be stolen. So slavery. So we have the arising of a warrior, patriarchal society in the Eastern Mediterranean region that, where the role model for young boys more and more began to be the role model of the hard, tough, macho male who's capable of violence against animals and women and rival herders. And then women began to be seen not as mysterious and, not mysterious, always mysterious, but powerful, but as the source of life and respected for doing something men can't do, which is to bring forth new life. But they began to be seen as breeders. They're like the animals. They're just breeders. So now the whole idea that women are looked at as breeders and they're bought and sold. You just read. I mean, read these books. And, women are bought and sold just like cows and sheep and goats. They're property. And so we have the arising of this society. And this is, if you want animal agriculture, you want to eat meat, you want to have hot dogs and hamburgers. This goes with the territory. You're never going to have it without it. And that's, we have to understand that very clearly. And this society, that these cultures that grew up, these herding cultures, these violent, warlike cultures where just the wealthy ate the meat, spread throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, to the Northern Mediterranean region, into the Central Asia, and spread continually into Europe, transforming and into, of course, they came here. They didn't just come with their by themselves, the Europeans. They brought their slave animals, as the Indians called them. And this whole system is still spreading today. We go to Africa. We were just in South Africa not too long ago, and you can see Kentucky Fried Chicken is moving in. Now they're wiping out the forest. They're growing soybeans and corn. They're killing all the elephants, the zebras, the giraffes, the lions. They're all enemies now. Going to get rid of all these pests. This is animal agriculture. This is still spreading through ConAgra, through Cargill, through Monsanto, through Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, McDonald's, through the USDA, the World Bank, the IMF. I mean, I call it the military, industrial, meat, medical, pharmaceutical, media, banking complex. This complex, it's based on animal agriculture, and it gets its talons into us if we're eating animal foods. If we want to be free of that, we have to give up animal foods. That's the root of the whole thing. That's where it grabs everything. So we have to wake up and understand this, and it's a beautiful thing. When we begin to understand this, we can actually liberate animals, liberate ecosystems, liberate our brothers and sisters all over the world who are suffering so much, and create the foundation of a society where peace and freedom and justice and equality are actually possible. They are possible. We are well aware now that we live on a beautiful and abundant. How many of you have noticed by now that the earth is beautiful? Anybody notice that yet? Yay, it's beautiful, and it's also abundant. We can grow plenty to feed everybody. You have to understand that. I mean, there's enough, like Gandhi said, there's enough for everyone's need. There'll never be enough for everyone's greed. So to kind of shrink our greed and be grateful for the delicious plant-based foods that we can live, and be grateful for the life that we have, the possibilities that we have for creating community. So that's the basic message, and I just want to close by, there's a lot more I could say, but essentially just the power of community. The only reason anyone eats animal foods is because of the communities we're raised in. So now we can create alternative communities. That's what we're doing right now. For a couple of hours, we have this alternative community based on kindness and caring and mercy and tenderness and health and freedom and liberation and so forth. And there's Veg Fest, there's vegan restaurants, there's all kinds of sanctuaries, all kinds of different ways we can create these alternative communities. That's how we change. That's what happened to me. I was raised in a typical family in New England, eating the usual animal foods. I said to my mother when I was about 7, I asked her, "So Mom, the kind of foods we're eating, lots of meat, dairy, and eggs, and so forth." I said, "Is this what everybody eats?" And she just said, "Yeah, this is what people eat. Human beings, this is what we eat." And I said, "Okay, thanks." And then she came back a little later and she said, "Well, sorry, that's not completely true. There are vegetarians." This is way back in the late 1950s, I think. And I remember saying, "Well, so what's a vegetarian?" It's like this big word. I was at that age when I loved learning big new words, right? It's a nice big one. Anyway, she said, "Don't worry about it. You're never going to meet one." She said, "I'm a lot older than you are. I never met one." And she said, I don't know where they get their protein. So I have this image of these poor vegetarians dragging themselves through the dirt. I need some protein. Help, give me some protein. And it was, my mother was right. I never saw a vegetarian. I never heard it again. And I went away to summer camp in Vermont. I learned how to catch my own shit when I was 13 years old. That point, I had to cut her head off, put her through the skull and tank. I did all that. I knew this is where the food comes from. I knew I was a tough young kid. And it was beautiful. In fact, this is beautiful organic dairy nestled in the Green Mountains of Vermont, where nothing bad ever happens, right? And there was a dairy here. We would kill the dairy cow. We would right on the floor of the barn. We just shoot her, the head with a gun. The dairy operator would cut her head off. She'd say you have to, bleed her out. I mean, it was horrific. It was unbelievably just incredible. But I was so completely indoctrinated at 13, 14 years old. I couldn't really question. I just thought, well, you said you can't use them for milk, you gotta use them for meat. That's what they're for, that's their purpose. So I was so glad later, after I left home right after college, my brother and I thought we'd try to walk to California, all the way across the country. We got as far as Buffalo. And actually in Buffalo, we walked south, because October was getting cold, and we walked all the way down to Alabama. On the way we stopped in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, we stopped for about 3 or 4 weeks in a place called Farm, and it was the largest city colony in the world back in 1975 when we got there. And it was started by these people from San Francisco, and they had 900 people living at the farm. It was like a long-haired community, a bunch of hippies, and they were all vegetarians. They were vegetarians, and nobody was dragging themselves. We were actually thriving. And they had I'd say about 200 children thriving, and they were not just vegetarians, they were vegans. I mean, no one heard of the word vegan in 1975, so you couldn't use it, but they didn't eat meat or dairy or eggs, right? Or honey. I mean, they were like, they did it for ethical reasons. So they were vegans and they were thriving, so I became at that point a vegetarian. They told me why. I said, why are you doing this? They said, well, don't you know that we're eating low on the food chain, so it's enough for everyone to eat. And they also said that don't you know the animals go through it. They talked a little bit about the suffering in animals. So that was it. I never ate meat after that day. And I found out when Adeline actually many years later, and she, the same month of the year, back in November of '75, also decided in Switzerland never to eat any meat herself as well. It's interesting. And then a few years later, I went vegan, and then again, a few years after that, I went to Korea. I was living as a Zen monk in this monastery, and I really got it. This is not this new idea. This is an ancient wisdom teaching. So by creating, it's so wonderful to go back lately to China, to Korea, to go to these monasteries. They very often get 400 or 500 people that come to these monasteries just to hear me speak. It's so neat. And to talk about veganism. And not just monks and nuns, but the whole, everybody from the surrounding city or village will come. And then promoting in the village, promoting veganism as a path of the future. It's only the Chinese government has mandated that everyone in China reduce the amount of meat they're eating by 50%. Can you imagine if we did that? Our federal government said, okay, everybody cut the amount of meat you're eating by 50%. They made that like the official government policy of the whole country. But they understand, it's the climate, the water, the health, and also there's an ancient tradition actually that this is the way of a harmonious world. So I think the future right now is very complex. It looks very dark in many ways, but I think there's a bright glow to the horizon in the sense that each one of us, when we leave here, we can go back into our communities and we can help build vegan communities. That's the greatest thing we can do, is to build vegan community, not only in the outer level, but within ourselves, to ourselves be a one-person vegan community. Wherever I go, I can create a space of liberation. My home can be a space of liberation, a space of freedom, no animal foods here, and I can create groups, maybe social media groups, or it's great to come to LA and just see the vibrant scene here, all the different vegan restaurants and the festivals and all these different things, and just keep the community spirit growing and support each other in that in any way we can. I think this is fundamentally a grassroots movement that's based on transformation. Each one of us to transform ourselves. I would love it if I could change other people. This is the thing, I wish, I went through quite a few, probably 10 years, in my first 10 years of being a vegan, where I thought if I just could grab those meat eaters and shake them hard enough, I could make them wake up. I just could shake them, and I'll slap you a few times and shake and slap. Come on. I wouldn't shoot them, but I would at least do that. No, but I thought, that would work, and I realized, that's never going to work. I mean, if someone came up to me and said, I'm a vegan, I'm right, you're not, you're wrong, no matter what, I would say, okay, let's fight, because really, I can't change them. I can change myself, but I can't change them. But what I can do is I can plant seeds. And that's, I think, the thing. And we plant seeds effectively when we're working on ourselves. So thank you all so much for the efforts you're making. Much love to you all, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We would like to pass the hat for some donations for Changelings. And Michael, would you like to come up and say a word or two about what Changelings does? And I'll tell you what, while he's talking, I'll go ahead and make the first donation of $20. So if you like the food tonight, you're happy to be here in this facility, and also Changelings did do a great advertisement for us and help out all the wonderful work they do for social justice.
Thanks. Yeah, Changelings is a free newspaper. It's a community calendar and progressive news. It's been coming out for about 20-some years. I've been working on it about the last 4 or 5 when the previous person who was the editor, John Johnson, passed away. A group of us got together and revived it. There are some copies in back. I also work on another paper called Turning the Tide. It's an anti-racist newspaper. We've had some articles in the past, for example, about, you mentioned China. Cuba, for example, changed its diet completely after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They got off of petrochemical agriculture. They went to organic agriculture, but they also changed, they were very much of a meat-oriented eating society, and they changed fundamentally towards a plant-based diet. I think some of them still eat meat, but they grow their own vegetables in the cities, and I think those are the kind of changes we need to see in this society as well. Changelings is a small contribution to doing that. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, so we have time for a few questions. Anyone have a question you'd like me to respond to? Emmanuel, yes.
Yes, Will, very interesting. You had talked about the origins. That's okay, I'm embarrassed.
Go ahead, Tom.
You had talked about the origins of organized violent aggression, something very, but anyway, you had said it was called Gavia. I wonder what language that origins from.
Okay.
And lastly, I just wanted to ask you about war. Well, what is it good for?
All right, Gavia is, I don't know if anyone is a Sanskrit scholar here, but there's a word in Sanskrit, go, which means cow, like gopi, gopal, govinda, and that's all cow, cow, cow. And so Gavia is from the root go in Sanskrit, which means cow, and so Gavia means the desire for more cows. But it means war. It's the foundation of war. And what is war good for? Well, actually, you know, war is very effective for a power elite because what it does is it just makes everyone contract, and they make a lot of money. I mean, they always make a lot of money on war, and they can always increase their power. I mean, you know, the wealthy elite increases its power and control over the population through war, and so I think that's why it's used so much as a tool for consolidating power and consolidating more wealth. But again, it's an extension of animal agriculture. So we have to, all of us, practice non-cooperation with these forces. You know, don't cooperate not only with the war machine, but also with the war machine against animals. So don't buy any animal-based products, foods, or any products at all, entertainment. You know, just don't cooperate with that and find alternatives. And it's wonderful to do because we find that we have to be a little bit more creative. But, and sometimes it's more expensive. It's only because animal-based products and foods are massively subsidized by our taxpayer dollars, which is really another crime. In fact, I just read the other day, I can't remember the amount of money, but it was a lot of money. I think it was $50 billion was just appropriated in the Senate to help bail out the dairy industry because people are just going away from dairy. They're just going to soy milk, rice milk, almond milk, and all these other hazelnut and everything else, coconut milk. And so the dairy industry has got its tentacles so deeply for hundreds of years into governments, and so they can just extract massive amounts. The government buys the dairy and sends it overseas to people who are lactose intolerant and causes, pharmaceutical industry loves that, they make more money. And it's all interconnected. So this is all a war. I mean, this whole system in many ways is a war. Even when it's not a war, it's actually a war. I mean, what's actually happening to people, it's a war. And so what we're talking about with veganism is peace. Essentially, it's harmony. It was really neat. One of the things I saw, just as an example, I mean, a lot of people, we're always demonizing China. But it was really interesting, like in China, when we were in Qufu, there was, which is a city a little south of Beijing, kind of central China, where Confucius had his thing. And I always knew that Buddhism was very pro-veganism, especially in northern Buddhism, like in China and in Korea, Taiwan. But I didn't know Confucianism, so there's this large Confucian population there, and they have bought 4,000 acres of land, and they've put millions of dollars into creating a completely vegan city, small city, or village. I can't say it's a town, it's maybe a town. So they've already built many buildings. They grow all their own food. It's all vegan agriculture. We ate these noodles that they grew the grain, and they made the noodles and all these different squashes of various kinds, and they had dances, and they're building schools. Everything is vegan. They're building a retirement center for the old people. Anyone in China can live there. It's like an open city. It's all vegan. And it's because Confucianism is based on its core on harmony with nature and with elders, and honoring elders and honoring children. And so the whole thing of veganism lives as a key component of that, because it's based on minimizing our waste of resources and conserving and building for the future. And so everything they're doing is in alignment, and we see these kinds of things all over the world, really, and beautiful sanctuaries like China and Taiwan things too. They're doing wonderful things. I was actually, I could be on it's hard to imagine here, but I'd actually be on a press conference with the top people in the government, like the Senate whip, like the top guy or second top, and then the former president of Taiwan. We could actually talk on a national news press conference about having a tax on meat. What a great idea that would be. About having all the children give up eating meat, dairy in the school. What a great idea. The reason we could do that, though, was because in Taiwan, there isn't any agriculture industry. It's a small island. They don't have these industries that make money on, which we don't get too much have. And so, the power of the industries, of course, is enormous. But I think for us as individuals, wherever we can, keep building this at a grassroots level, and do whatever we can to help create communities that are based on compassion, sustainability, and justice for each other, for animals, and for all beings. Any other questions? Yes, okay.
Hi, first I just wanted to talk fascinating to you. And I was just curious, did you keep in touch with any of the farm, or did you know anything about the farm people, what do they do now?
Okay, so the question is, she found the talk fascinating, but the question is what about the farm now? Yeah, the farm is still there. We just about 4 or 5 years ago did a world peace diet training at the farm. It was great. So we actually did a whole, like 3 or 4 days. It was 4 days. And so those people, a lot of people, when we were there, it was totally vegan. It was like, that's it, this is what we do. Now it's more, they had to change, the government attacked them. And so instead of being 900 people, they're 200. And it's odd, but there's no animal thing. I mean, you're not allowed to have any animals, like kill any animals. Nothing like agriculture allowed. And then most of the people are vegan, or for sure vegetarian. So they do have like the largest vegan cookbook publishing company in North America is right at the farm. And so they're really we're still a great place. We're still a book publishing company. Yeah. So yeah, so it's still a great place. You can go back there again. Yeah. Oh, okay, yes, sir.
A lot of people who are stopping meat or going on what's called a plant-based diet, because a lot of them hear about it from their doctor. Because I think what's interesting happening in our culture right now is culture is, the last few decades, has been hitting critical mass, and people now showing overt signs of disease. They can't keep it down any longer. So all these people are, now we got this term called plant-based, which we all know the difference between plant-based and vegan. There's no V word, right? So the question is, if a lot of these people who are coming on a plant-based diet because they heard about it from the doctor or health reasons, do you think once those people, or have you seen any evidence of those people who would not be World Peace Diet readers before,
Right.
Do you think by them coming on through the back door would gravitate in that higher consciousness?
That's okay. So the basic question is just essentially, when people move to a plant-based way of eating because of health concerns, do they then go vegan, in a sense? Do they broaden their motivation to include the abuse of animals and so forth? And I think there's a lot of evidence that they do that. So I think moving to a plant-based way of living is a great thing. I mean, it's if we do it for our own health, that seems like a self-centered motivation, but really, quite honestly, it's not only self-centered. I mean, anyone who really tries to be healthier for themselves is not only helping themselves, they're helping everyone. Now, I've seen this so many times, like a woman will be vegan, and she'll want her husband, this is just one example, it's not always male or female, but she'll want her husband to go vegan too, so he'll be healthier. And he doesn't want to, and he likes his meat. And then he gets a stroke. And the next 10 years, he doesn't even know, he doesn't remember anything, and she has to take care of him until he dies. And you know, it's like, it would be so nice if he would have cared about her enough to change his diet, you know, not destroy it. So when we're healthy, you know, we're helping other people. But I think, like you say, going plant-based is kind of coming at it through the back door in the sense that I'm doing it really kind of like caring about myself and my health, and I don't want to think about the animals. But what we found is that when people stop eating animal foods, then their minds start to open, and they start reading the world peace diet, and they go vegan, and they deepen their motivation, and they can become, you know, really great activists for justice for animals too. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You explained the definition of intelligent,
Yes.
and at the same time, you mentioned, you know, when the authority do something, you don't question it. We have a friend. She's sitting here. Every Friday we are on the corner of Sunset Echo Park. She has a banner that says, every minute we spend $110 billion on military. So we don't have to question that?
Yeah, we have to question that. That's the whole point, yeah. Definitely, that's great you're doing. Who's doing that? Is that? Thank you. Yeah, see, that's beautiful, you know. And why isn't that coming out in the media? You know, my father actually, I was born into a family he owned a whole chain of newspapers, and so I learned growing up that you do not run any news stories that your advertisers don't like. This is a very key point. So we have to understand when we turn on the TV or listen to the radio or we'll read a newspaper, we're getting the official version that's approved by the biggest advertiser, which are the fast food companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the chemical companies, the military. You know, these companies are paying for the media, so we have to make that connection and make our own news. It's very important. Yeah. Okay, one last. I think we're running a little bit. All right, I can take one more question. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
It's not completely a question, but when I think about animal agriculture as a monster, it scares me. I just see these people as uneducated, even though they call themselves elite, they are still uneducated people who can turn their horrible business into plant-based business, still can make money, and they was all alone, right, with the animals.
And they what? What's the last name?
He was all alone in peace with the animals. Like, I'm not against these people anymore, because the more we approach this subject as we are against them, the more hostile they become towards us. So I want these people to understand we're not trying to destroy their businesses, we're not some agents or spies who have been sent by other companies to destroy their businesses. But to me, it's calling them into a conscious business model where nobody is getting hurt, nobody is being abused. They can still make money off of us, but just don't do it through killing us and animals, right?
Right, okay, so the comment, and I'll just respond quickly, is about the, I guess you're talking about the owners or the people who are sort of the power structure who want to continue the whole system the way it's going. Yeah, I know. I mean, when we go to some countries like New Zealand, for example, especially, it's a big thing, and quite a few countries are like this, where they feel that their whole economy depends on animal agriculture. And what would the farmers do if they didn't have pigs and cows? You know, what would happen? And I think it's important to understand that it's, first of all, animal agriculture is terrible work, and we still need to eat food, so we're not putting anybody out of business. Going vegan, we're still going to be eating, so it's really the best thing actually for farmers. And it's interesting to see a lot of the large meat companies now are buying vegan companies. Right? They're buying vegan meat companies, and they realize that there is no future in meat. There's no future in dairy. And these are definitely going to go. I have a subchapter in the World Peace Diet called "The Last Days of Eating Animals." These are the last days of eating animals. One way or the other, it is. And just to understand that the way things are going, the changes, the tempo of change is increasing. You know, it's really increasing. I mean, every day it's increasing. Even these major, like The Economist, Business Week, and these you know, the restaurant magazines, they're all talking about 2018 being the year of veganism, and it's the pulse is really increasing. So I think it's great to go out of here and be aware that we're, like you say, we're not trying to attack these people. But if someone were to say the same thing about, say, the people who are making nuclear weapons, say, well, come on, we want to use a few of these. I mean, this is part of our livelihood. We think, let's not use them. and nuclear weapons or any weapons, any, of mass destruction, we don't want to use, right? We just hope we never have to use it, but we're still building them. We still build thousands of them. We hope we never have to use them. Animal agriculture is just as devastating, and we're actually using it. So we should really stop using animal agriculture. We should stop destroying our planet, destroying these lives, destroying our health, destroying our spiritual health, and build a positive future. And so that's one of the reasons I think, even when Madeline and I travel, we go to places like the cornfields of Iowa and talk in these little cities where they're all farmers, and we give a talk like this, and no one argues with us, because we're not blaming anyone. We're just saying, look, you look at the history of our society, you understand that we're all products of our community, and they all agree, and they say, yeah, and they buy the book, and I don't know what happens, but we find people that say, that they one guy sent an email a while back, and he made his living as a hunter, and his wife dragged him to one of my lectures, and he said, now he's a vegan, and I think anyone can change, really. It's a beautiful thing. So anything is possible. So thank you very much. Much love to you all. I really appreciate your attention. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'll just say, maybe the final, just let you know we have copies of the books, all the ones that we mentioned, as well as music and art by Madeline. She has copies of paintings. Would you like me to play a short piece on the piano before we go? I'm going to play a short piece. Okay. Since we have it here. I'll just play a quick piece. It's called "Dance for the Arctic Moon." We have the sheet music if you want to buy the sheet music. But the Arctic, the North, represents in the indigenous traditions the direction of going within, and the moon represents spiritual illumination or awakening. It also represents the sacred feminine dimension of consciousness. So this is "Dance for the Arctic Moon." Enjoy.
Dennis.
Oh, it's on. We're good. Okay, here we go. Thank you, everyone. And, just to let you know, if anyone's interested, tomorrow Madeline and I will be in Pasadena and doing a lecture there, and actually we're going afterwards to someone's home where they have a grand piano, so I'll be doing a little piano concert there. And if you're interested or available next week, we're doing a 4-day training, well, not really a training, but a 4-day series of classes in Ojai. That's one of the reasons we came down at the Crotona Institute. You can come for just one day or for all 4. It's in the morning, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on the World Peace Diet. And also a few lectures in Santa Barbara and in Ventura. You can see our whole tour schedule at worldpeacediet.com. Also information about our training if you're interested in going more deeply into these ideas. We have the World Peace Diet facilitator training, it's an online training. A lot of people really love it. I think Patricia went through that, and anybody else in here go through that? I think there's quite a few people in LA have gone through it. Anyway, Kip Anderson went through it, and quite a few other people have over the years. So if you'd like to find out more, you can see us at the table. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have. And again, much love and gratitude to all of you. Thanks again for the work you're doing. Thank you.